FY27 school committee meeting. I'll call this meeting to order at 7:01. Before I start the meeting, I do want to have a moment of silence. We learned that we lost a former colleague, Laura Kohler. She was a dedicated speech-language pathologist at Grafton High School from 2006 until she retired in 2021. And had made a significant impact on the lives of students and teachers and families, and she will be very missed. Our hearts go out to her family. So if we could just take a moment of silence and keep Laura and her family in our thoughts. Thank you. And now I'll open the meeting up for public comment. Okay. And then we do not have a student presentation tonight, so we're going to go right to the meat, 2025 budget.
All right. As I believe you know, with our budget book and budget process, but for the most part, the budget book, we've taken a totally new approach this year. This seemed to be, not only did we have a change in our director of finance, who has some different great thoughts and ideas, and her approach is just different in a good way. So she's really led the charge to have a reset, also coming off of the messiness that was inherent in COVID and the funding that went with it from the federal government, the state government. That was kind of messy anyhow. And then last year, we leaned very heavily on ClearGov. We're still going to participate in ClearGov, but we're not going to lean into it like in the same way that we did last year. So long story, a little shorter, that the budget book has a different look to it. Which I'm very happy with. Of course, we're going to take your feedback once we make it public, which would be tomorrow morning. We'll take any feedback about format, any information that might be nice to have that's not in there. We're going to keep adding to it, but the crux of it is together. We shifted, one of the big moves we made was shifting from that DESI account structure where you had the thousands, the 2000s, 3000s. While on one hand, it made the year-end report a little easier, and that's a bear of a report, the problem is it's not a very clean setup. You could have something like technology in 5 different accounts, and that was universal. It happened all over the place. So we've moved to a cost center approach. And you'll see we've got it school-based, we've got it based on the different departments being technology, special education, et cetera, athletics. It's a lot cleaner, and I think long-term it's going to serve us incredibly well. And then if you looked at it from a global perspective, we break it down essentially into 2 parts: salaries, which is about 80% of our budget, and everything else, operations and management. But everything that's not salary related is under that second umbrella. So tonight, what I'm going to go over is an overview of the budget as a whole and the budget process, talk about that briefly, touch on conditions and assumptions, look at where we stand now in going into year 5 post-override. I want to just bring up what the future looks like, and we're going to have more information on that in the coming month. Talk about return on investment, and the last 2 things being the move from that initial request of an increase of about 6.8% down to 3.7%, which is what we expect to have for FY24 if nothing changes. And then lastly, just touch on entitlement grants, because that always comes up. And as I go, as usual, feel free to cut me off, ask questions, make me go back, whatever. So our funding comes from 4 central sources, really 3. And that's the biggest piece being about 68% being the local contribution. So the town of Grafton finances about 68% of our budget as a whole. The other big contributor is Chapter 70. Chapter 70 fills in that gap. It's state funding that fills in the gap between the required spending that the town has and the foundation budget. So what the state says has to be spent on education, and on one hand, on the other hand, what a town has to provide, and that difference is filled in with Chapter 70. And then lastly, about 2% historically comes from revolving accounts. So in the grand scheme of things, revolving accounts aren't too big of a deal, but this year, or this budget focused on next year, FY25, revolving accounts are a big deal for us. We're going to be using more revolvers than we have historically. You definitely know how we create our budget. We spend about 9 months of the year working on the budget. Back in late August, September, we start the process, we research, we analyze what our needs are. We look at enrollment, of course, what's working, what isn't working, look at our staffing. Then we come up with a plan for how we would utilize that money. We present to the school committee what, not in a dream state, what we'd like to have. I'm sure that would be 20% increase, but next step down, kind of a reasonable request, and for us it was that increase of 6.8%. Then we go through the reality process between state funding, federal funding, and what the town can afford, and we manage and collaborate to make whatever that amount is that we have work for us, and can we at the very least provide level service to our students and staff. Our budget drivers, I'm going to talk about this more in a second. I touched on it a minute ago, but professional salaries, that's 80%. So the size of that blue circle doesn't do it justice here. The other big ones for us are certainly special education, facilities, technology, information are huge. Inflation, while not on its own, not a giant number, we are just constantly pressed in terms of continuous increases in the cost for doing everything that we do. We saw a big spike during COVID, but largely that spike has been sustained. We've seen that with tuitions, transportation, costs of goods and materials, especially those related to maintenance, and a lot of pressure around salaries as well. So those are 5 that we very much keep in mind. This is a better illustration of the magnitude of the salary piece, just over 80%. You can't see it too awfully well, but special education and transportation make up about 11%, almost 12%. So between salaries, special education, and transportation, that's 92% of our budget. So there's often talk about all the other stuff, but when you look at it in totality, it's really a small sliver of this budget. Conditions and assumptions, nothing new. I've talked about this numerous times throughout the past few months, but we're looking for right now a level service budget. So can we provide the same experience to our students next year that we do this year, that we did last year, et cetera? Hopefully, ideally, we get better and better, but in terms of programs, we're not looking to add, we're always looking to get better, but we're not adding any kind of bells and whistles or nice to have programs at this point. We would have COLA and step increases applied to the bargaining units. All 4 of our bargaining units are in negotiations this spring. We are assuming state and federal grants will be level funded. The revolvers will be also level funded. Circuit breaker anticipated at 75%, and Chapter 70 remaining stable. Unfortunately, we expect to next year and in future years, until something changes, we're going to be a minimum aid district. I'll talk about that a little more going forward. But in terms of an increase to Chapter 70, that's $30 per student. That's for us about $92,000 in a $45 million budget. That's not a game changer. So I want to touch on where we stand now and then what the future looks like. Obviously, in terms of where we stand now, we're in year 5 post-override. That's the one on the far right in the green for FY25. That will be year 5. So over the past 5 years, if we do land at 3.3 7% increase. That averages 4.31% over the past 5 years, with a high of 5.42 and that low just under what we'll have next year at 3.65. This slide I took from Evan's presentation to the school committee 2 weeks ago, and the number that stands out at the bottom, the colors don't show up too well with this projector, but to the right of the 265,000, that's all deficit or shortfall. It's all in red. So the numbers that are before you here, and I just put them so you could see it a little better here, that's, you saw the past 5 years and next year. That includes next year. And then if we don't have an operational override, what as a town, not a school district, we're looking at in terms of deficit. I want to be clear in that what Evan and Mary did in terms of the initial forecast that they're still working on, they built in a 3% increase every year for the next 5 years for the schools. You can see that that's, you know, we're keeping our head above water with this, but a 3% would be, it would be tremendously challenging. So to help with that, what we're doing is, I think I mentioned it last 2 weeks ago, we are currently working on a 5-year projection for the school district so that we can have numbers. We'd obviously present the projections to you or that forecast and then share it with the town, and Evan would be able to build those numbers into that table and make these numbers, there is no way they aren't worse than that. Does that make sense? Okay. Mm-hmm. I wanted to touch on return on investment. When people, historically, I bring this up when I feel threatened or questioned about how, you know, gosh, the schools are just spending so much. I do want to, for the purposes of just tonight, frame it in a very positive way. And I know the school committee and I think the students understand this, that I think we do, I know we do an exceptional job. And I would put us up as a district against any district in the state of Massachusetts in terms of that return on investment that we get for the amount of funding that we receive. So the FY23 numbers are out for per pupil expenditures, and what that is simply all of the money that's spent on education is divided by the number of students that you have. So you get more of an apples-to-apples comparison. We are out of 300, I think it's 333, but let's say 320 districts, we are 14th from the bottom in 2023. We've not so much moved up, it's more that districts have moved back, unfortunately. What you see now near us are those districts that had failed overrides and reductions, and they're with us. But it is what it is. We're still obviously super thankful that we had the support of the town, had the override. Without that override, we would be, I bet, bottom 5, easy. So $16,600 per student. I just mapped out the districts, with the exception of Worcester, that we border, and obviously it looks, or the smallest, but to give it some kind of perspective, I compared it to the state average. And again, state average, when we compare ourselves to state average in terms of performance, if we're not beating state average, we're upset. To give it some kind of context, if we were to receive the state average, and don't get your hopes up because I don't think it's going to happen, but if miraculously we received the state average in terms of per pupil funding, that would be an additional $12.6 million next year, just 1 year. Like that, it's the amount is staggering. And unfortunately, we're stuck with our increase right now unless something unforeseen happens in a positive way of our increase through, we know what we're getting from the town through Chapter 70, increase of $95,000. So It's certainly a challenge, but I'm making it kind of sound negative already, but the fact that our performance and I think the day-to-day experience that our students receive in Grafton, I would put up against any of these districts. And we're talking at the bare minimum, 5 million, 6 million plus in terms of a difference every single year. All right. Any questions so far? Just keep going, keep going. All right. So over the past month and a half, let's say a month and a half, we've had to move from that initial request of 6.8% to the 3.7%, which is what we, at this point, expect for funding. I know this is a little small, but up top, I put the kind of smaller, in the grand scheme of things, smaller reductions, so decreases to lines in buildings and grounds. We are expecting to need less for the retirement payout in '25. We're very optimistic that we're going to have a reduction in the district tuition line that we're paying to send students out of district. We have one, we anticipate one retirement that we will not have to necessarily fill. So we can save that position through attrition. 2 requested paraprofessionals, we are going to eliminate that request, and we've already looked at restructuring to make that situation successful and very doable for FY25. Right now, we've put one of our literacy curriculum requests right now is on hold. If we do decide with the pilot group to move forward with that request, we do have some plans potentially in the area of technology where I am confident we could free up funds if that's the direction we end up going in. But as of now, that's on hold. And office supply budget line of 13,000, a reduction of 13,000. So that gets us somewhere, but nowhere near the 1.4 million that we need. The remaining 4 things are all related to revolving accounts, and that added up is $930,000. So the bulk of getting us to the 1.4 million is through increased use of revolvers. We've historically put salaries on, paid for salaries through revolving accounts. Most typically, in the past, that's been done through school choice, where we know we're bringing in $750,000. So paying out, planning for $300,000, say, in salaries, that's safe. I mean, you might have some movement with kids coming in or out, but we've got a waiting list, like 50 kids deep. Like, I'm not too worried about that. I'm not worried about that at all. But instead of doing $300,000, we're going to be putting a lot more, utilizing revolvers for salaries to a much greater degree than we ever have before. That's not built to last. It isn't, and I'll be able to show you that. This gets us through FY25, and without a doubt, we are, in my mind at least, the town is going to need an operational override in the 2025 year. There's just no, or we are going to hit a cliff. In the ideal world, let's just pretend that we had more funding for FY25, we would be trying to almost stockpile and not utilize revolvers to give us a bit of a cushion when we go off the cliff. It's just not an option. We'll have some cushion, but not much. And when I talk about that cushion or margin, we don't have, unlike a budget that you'd have at your house, and when things are going well, you're going to have whatever that is, some kind of emergency fund. We don't have a line for emergency fund. That would be awesome. But when things go today, a big valve, we didn't have water in 2/3 of high school today. that goes. We don't go to the budget and say, oh, yeah, the special valve for, of course, we don't have that. Like, if we don't have it in maintenance, we're gonna have to go to, it would be school choice. I don't know how much a valve is, but let's pretend you had to come up with, for a server or a valve, you name it. We don't go to the town and say special town meeting for the server that went down. We could go to school choice because we'd have that sitting there. And that's been wonderful for us. But that's obviously that's just not gonna be just to some degree, that's not gonna be an option in 25. We'll have some cushion there, and I'll speak to it, but when you're talking about such a big operation, again, a $45 million budget, having 700,000 maybe in a revolving account isn't all that comforting. So with revolvers, using school choice, using a revolver we have for incoming tuition funds, it's all great, but it's, again, money that isn't there necessarily to offset annual operating costs. So the one resulting question would be, where does that leave us in terms of revolver accounts in FY25? So our best estimate is before you. I'm hoping this is pessimistic, but this is our best thinking in terms of where, if we spend out as we plan to, and that plan doesn't change for any reason, we should end next year, so the FY25 year, with about $760,000 in reserve. Obviously, that's going to limit us that following year, and that we wouldn't have money we couldn't continue paying for all these salaries in 26. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. But we're not totally broke either. In the past, we've been able to basically build up reserves where we know that we're carrying forward about $1 million every year. That's, again, a fallback if we need it. Anything from, I don't know, a boiler goes. I've talked about servers. If mid-year, just this year, we had a number of students, ELL students, come into the district, and we had to hire a teacher for the middle school. We didn't see that coming. We didn't even see that coming last August. And in September, October, we had to scramble. But that's where we get that money. So anyhow, instead of carrying $2 million, knowing we could spend out $1 million and then still carry $1 million forward, we're going to be down to 763. So we're pretty much out of money, and we don't have any money to move forward after 25.
Jay, can I interrupt you?
Of course.
So I think I know the answer, but what's your comfort level? Like, it's very uncomfortable, obviously, just to have that amount of money. That could be, I mean, you didn't even talk about if somebody moves into district, which I guess we wouldn't have to pay for next year, but things like that. What would your comfort level be to have in the revolver? Would it be the
This is
million?
about rock bottom.
This is a rock bottom.
This is rock bottom. In the back of my head, we still have that 200,000 years ago. Gosh,
Yeah,
it was
the
but
stabilization.
we do have a special education stabilization account, which we've never had to go to.
Right.
But that's sitting there. I mean, we would deal with it if we had to, but my worst case scenario is obviously having to go. You read about towns that have to have a special town meeting to ask the town for 300,000. That is not high on my wish list.
Right.
So in my head, this is about 963. If we had to,
If we had
could
to.
utilize that. We always have needs in terms of the special education. That would be almost worst case scenario.
Okay.
But
Because I
anything
know
below this, I'd be
the
worried.
alternative is making cuts
Correct.
of real, so far we haven't had to touch any real staff people.
Correct.
The alternative to keeping higher in our revenue, in our revolver, would be making some cuts to
Yeah,
programs
it would
or to
100%
staff.
impact
Yep.
that 80%, no
Yep.
question.
Okay.
And at this point, with what I'm putting before you, I don't believe students are negatively impacted
Right.
in any way. But that next step, and certainly if we don't get an operational override next year,
Right.
again, if this was 2 million, you've got a little bit of a cushion. The mattress is super thin at 763.
And even 2 million's not a huge cushion
No,
for this budget.
correct.
Thank you. Any other questions while he's stopped? Okay, keep going. Thank you.
Almost done, you're welcome.
You're
And then
doing great.
entitlement grants, people generally think there are millions and millions in entitlement grants. Entitlement grants, there's a big process and application that takes a good chunk of the summer to put in for, but assuming you fill out everything properly, you're getting those grants. They're not, woohoo, we won, we got a Title I grant. It's given to the district. So I've broken out over the past few years what we've received, always around between 800 and 900,000. For 24, we were at 922. I do anticipate potentially Title I going down a little bit next year. So I think 900,000's fairly safe to assume. And almost all of that is, 82, just about 83% is the special education IDEA grant, and most of that goes to salaries. But that, again, that's not like the revolver where you hope people, like transportation, we hope everybody buys a bus pass kind of thing. Like, we can count on this. We're getting about this amount of money. So most of that is salary. And so what's next? So we're going to continue to look at everything. I feel like this is a fantastic foundational document. But if there's anything that we can change, tweak, et cetera, to free up additional funds, we're of course going to do it and make that a part of the FY25 budget. We're going to wait on the finalized revenue projections. I'm not particularly optimistic about money from the state. The cherry sheet, as Evan mentioned 2 weeks ago, was not promising at all. And I mentioned that school department forecasting, and Kathleen Lungarini, our finance director, her mentor, Pat Collins, who was a long time, he was a superintendent, then the finance director in Shrewsbury, retired, and he's doing consulting work and working as her mentor. He is going to play a large role in helping us to do that forecasting, which is just great all around. I think it's important having an outside set of eyes looking at it as well. So I'm looking forward to having that together, and we'll most likely have Pat here with myself and Kathleen to present that. And I can take any questions you have.
Thank you, Jay. Liz?
I sort of missed my opportunity to bring this up way back when you were talking
Yep.
about the average percent increase in Grafton over the years, and I think you gave over the last 5 years an average increase of 4.31%. And it just, I think I knew this, but just to hear you say it tonight, it's unbelievable to me that we are still 14th from the bottom in per pupil spending, and we've passed 2 overrides over the last 9 years. And just wondering how a school are there, and I haven't, I could do this research, I suppose, but I was just wondering if maybe you already have, if there's other school districts in that area that have passed overrides as well, and are they growing or are there increases at a similar rate, or are other school districts increases so much higher than ours is on average? Or do you know what the state, I know there's a lot of questions in here. Do you know what the
So far, I know zero of the
state
answers.
average increase
So keep going.
is? I'm just wondering if that average increase of 4.31, which is low,
I actually
do you know how that
I
compares to
think
the
I
state
know
average?
some of the answers to that, if you don't mind.
No.
Just because,
Okay.
Not at all.
I went to a Massachusetts Association School Committee meeting with the leadership a few weeks ago, and we talked about this. And then they put out a survey of what people were getting and what they were asking for, and the average was between like 2 and 4%. I think the problem, and you spoke about it, but I was thinking when I started, we were 3 from the bottom.
Wow.
So, but Jay was saying, it's because other people have fallen, not because people have grown, which is, I'd love to change that. But people also started with, like, they have a lot more money to start with. Grafton was, we were 3rd from the bottom
Right.
last.
I mean, that's the trick with, obviously, with percentages. Our
Yeah.
3%,
Yeah, you have
Westboro's
to-
3%
yeah,
are
yeah.
very
Small
different.
pie, big, small, whatever, that, my favorite analogy. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if I helped right there, but I do
No, you did,
know
'cause
that
I was wondering kind of
average
how we were
has
trending,
been,
if we were.
at least this year,
yeah.
people are, we're seeing override requests all over from
Yeah.
districts we've never seen before, but I think
Yeah.
because they started bigger,
Yeah.
they are higher, I
Yeah.
guess, if that makes sense. Does that
Yeah.
make,
It does make sense.
I'll
We made
bring it
more
back.
adjustments with the first override. That
Yeah.
first year, we added some
Mm-hmm.
positions. That was more, that is what it is. The second one, and I want to be 100% clear that all of us couldn't be more thankful to the town for supporting it. It was the beginning of COVID, when we're sweating like nobody's business on the football field. But that, in my head, oversimplification was to keep our head barely above water. It wasn't
yeah,
like,
Absolutely.
it wasn't to get a heck of a lot better.
and
Even that 5% was, a lot of that was tied to like the COVID up ramp. It wasn't new stuff.
And just to kind of circle back to even like history, you used to always say it takes 4% to even kind of keep the lights on. Now we're down to 3%.
Well,
Things have
3.7, but if we
but-
didn't have the,
Override.
it would no. Well,
I'll
you're
stop
right,
talking.
the override. But if we didn't utilize the revolvers and we didn't have school choice, if we didn't have those things, the discussion tonight would be markedly different.
And we're not going to have those next year.
That's sums up my very point. Correct.
Okay, Liz, I'm sorry if
Yeah.
I jumped in.
No,
but
you in a very good way.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how we got to, what would you say, we were at number 3 all those years ago, but,
Yeah, I'm
Kinda
sure I'll
doesn't-
have that
doesn't
breakdown pretty
matter
soon. And
so
that-
much
we-
now,
We
but-
definitely got a boost. We went from 3 to, I don't know, 10
yeah, I think it
Yeah.
was 9.
with the
I
override.
wanna
We went up a little bit, but the amounts are, going back to, I mean, the differences are just,
it's a lot of money, the
it's a
difference.
lot of money.
It's amazing what Grafton's able to do.
I mean, even Westboro can't, I guess you could frame this 100 different ways. This is the first time that I've ever seen Westboro go below the state average. They were always very close, but I've never seen them below.
And they used to give 200% of the minimum contribution. They were giving double. Wow.
And we give 13,
Yeah.
12, 13. And good for them. I mean, that's fantastic. They've got a different,
Yeah.
They've got commercial industry. It's just a different town. Obviously, I'm not knocking them, but it's not like, I mean, they're off by 12.6 million a year, and they're below the state average. So, we're doing awfully well with what we have, and hopefully we can continue to have.
I think one thing I'd love to see, and this is probably more a next year conversation, is when we say we're doing really well, if we can put some data behind that.
Of course.
Like,
Yeah.
and I hate that because what are we gonna compare, MCAS score, but I'd love to just have like a picture because, I think we all are proud and stand by our district. So
Yeah, we'll
that's
definitely
like
have
a
that.
key piece that we could
Sure.
add in
Yeah.
because when we say you get a good return on your investment,
Yeah.
here's how.
And I know we've had, really, our students have been doing well on AP exams, for example, better than, sort of the average, and our area of the state. So I think there is a lot of data there. It just has to be pulled
Oh,
together,
yeah.
I think. But
I don't think we're in any
lack of
it.
I did have another question.
Yeah, just go.
So I know we've done a ton of forecasting about sort of students and, you know, growth in the town and what that's going to translate into in terms of numbers of students in the buildings. But you even gave the example of sort of getting a number of ELL
Mhm.
students and learners unexpectedly in the community. We talked a little bit about, you know, reductions that can be made in special education or special education funds that could be used differently, or the hope that there'll be less out-of-district placements. How are we set for, you know, an influx or, you know, a change in sort of what we forecasted? Because those are all,
I
there's
think
a lot
we're-
of building in town, there's always, you know, unforeseen special education needs.
Yeah, great question.
Sorry.
Well, this goes back to, I think, twofold. One, I think we're set up well in terms of our programming. I think the work with the two collaboratives we do, I think we've got a lot of pieces in place that all cost money, but we retain the great majority of our students and meet
Yes.
their needs. So that's, like, I think our structure is good. That does definitely go to the revolvers, too, that discussion again, where if that happened, I was in Shrewsbury when I think we literally had 8. I might, over the years, have blown that up. Maybe it was 6 students, all with high needs, moved in literally in 2 months, like $1 million, maybe $800,000 impact. That was, and we figured it out at the time. Didn't have choice, but somehow made it work. But that
But it can
that
happen,
never
right.
leaves my mind, that happened in a 2-month span. Normally, we'd obviously be transparent about it, but say we're going to have to go to more circuit breaker, more school choice, and bail us out. But if at the end of next year we have 700,000, that doesn't work in concert with, of course, the valves are still going to break, the server's going to go down, the boiler goes down on the coldest day of the year. That's going to happen. So that definitely has me worried.
And are the entitlement grants that are largely driven by special education needs, I mean, how are those calculated? Like, they
I
wouldn't
can
go
get
up
you that
commensurately.
information. Yeah, it's generally driven by largely enrollment, to be
Yeah.
quite frank with
I
you.
figured,
Um,
okay.
We've never been under 800,000, or never in the last decade been under 800, never over 920.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Amy?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. First of all, I think this is probably the best presentation that I've seen. This is the 5th time for me. I love the slides that talk about the budget drivers, how we create the budget. Like, those slides are great, because this eventually does go to the general public, and it you know, I'll be sharing these on my Facebook and talking to people about starting now to plant the seeds for next year, because we're going to need that override. I did have one question about the slide, budget drivers, which I believe is page 6. Everything that's listed here is in that pie chart on the next slide, but I'm noticing that transportation is called out on that other slide, and it's not listed as a cost driver, and I wonder, I talk about transportation being a cost driver a lot, because it's an uncontrolled cost for us. So I didn't know if that might be something you could add here.
100%. Yep.
I talk mostly about the salaries, which we do control to an extent, special education, which we can't control as much as we might want to due to enrollment. Transportation is so huge.
Yep, that's an easy one to add, and you'll see that Kathleen and I broke that out as its own cost
Yeah.
center in the book.
I did see that.
And I-
The other question I had is not about the presentation, which again, fantastic. Can't wait to share it. In the budget book itself, the draft book,
Yep.
you have the NEASC data from the 2019 report. You know what's coming. we've been waiting for a while for their next report. Do you have any sense of when we're gonna get updated numbers? Because it's been almost a year now since we started asking for it.
No. No. I
So
can- I
much of
can
what's in
ask,
that report is
you know, like-
wrong, like projects that never came to fruition, projects that did come to fruition that aren't there. So I would just feel better with a more firm grasp of that enrollment projection. Because I know we're seeing it in general on the decline, but is that decline gonna be rapid or is it gonna be gradual?
Okay, I can easily contact them, NESDEC tomorrow.
That'd be great.
We may, and I can bring this to the committee if my thinking is correct, we may have to, instead of getting but basically the way it works is, say every 5 years you pay and you have them do the full report. Then they do a smaller update to it every year. If there's enough concern, we could recontract with them. I forget what the number is, but probably a couple $1,000, and have them come out.
Yeah, We're
I don't know
almost,
if it's on 5.
we're almost to year 5 now. It was 2019, so we're close.
We're close, but if the feeling was, let's move it up a year.
Yeah, because I
It's
went,
not
I
like
went through it
next year's
again.
free.
I went through it again, and like half of the housing projects that are in this never happened.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's historically been the case, but
Yeah.
obviously, you drive around town, and every time
Yeah.
I go by the development,
Yep.
Great. So I'll get information on, I'll add
That'd
the
be great.
transportation and get
Thank you.
NESDEC info.
Any other, Liz?
Yeah, regarding the revolving accounts, a couple of line items in there are fees and, I hate to bring this up, but do we need to have, we usually have a discussion around March of every year about fees. Do we need to look at those? Were the buses, fully utilized this year? Were kids filling up those buses? I'm just curious if you have any information about what kinds of conversations we need to be having about those things, whether it's in, next month or next year or,
I don't know if it's on the future agenda. In the past, it's not, we can add it. We have touched, usually around budget time.
yeah.
Some point in the spring, we touch on fees. I'm happy to get a report together on that.
I mean, I'd rather, on policy, we've talked about this, I mean, we can do the fees, but take a look at that use of facilities versus trying to, well, I'm not gonna get into the
Yeah,
discussion, but
I'm not saying
think
where
we
I would
had
be either
talked
way, I'm
about,
just
Jay,
doing a discussion.
months, I think we talked a while ago about relooking at our facility fees and we
The
had
facility
held off.
rental, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but again, that's gonna be such, I know.
nickel and diming, but
It's-
yeah. I mean, I hate to,
Yeah,
not
no,
to use
no,
that
you're
word,
right.
but
You
yeah,
have to
it's-
use, you have to look at everything and.
yeah,
figure it out.
just wondering if we need to talk about it, thinking of it, trying to think of everything,
Like school rental,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's not a big portion of it, yeah. But still.
any other questions, comments? Megan, did you?
So the parking fees, those are just from the high school, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then are the bus fees from the entire?
So we have to provide free transportation from K through, middle school, so K through 6. So we can't charge our elementary school students, but we can charge 7 through 12.
Okay, so those are both solely from the high school.
Middle school.
Right,
And
and
middle
middle school, because elementary kids don't drive to school, and we
Yeah.
can't charge them. So,
I
unfortunately,
assumed that, but I didn't know. Like, I assumed that staff got free parking, but I just
yeah, oh yeah, we don't make them pay for parking.
yeah.
Yeah.
That would be cruel.
Yeah,
No,
No, just
it
for
is, it's just from
students who
students. I'm
drive.
sorry, yeah, no, that's a good question. I hope we wouldn't have to do that. It's bad enough. I would love if we didn't have any fees and you could talk to me out of that, but, unfortunately, we do. Goodness, can you imagine?
The HR department is not looking to charge
Oh my
faculty and
God.
staff to park.
I think that's
Can't
important
even
to state.
Although, I have had to pay for parking
For work.
Not,
Oh, yeah.
not as a student,
Yeah, I
yeah.
always did.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't even want to go down this road. That's
Yeah,
gonna be the
let's not.
headline that, no, we're not doing that.
Good question, though.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? My computer just blue screened for those tech reports, so that's the kind of day I've had.
It's impressive.
Thank you, Jay. It was,
Thank you.
It was a really good
it
presentation.
was very
Yes, thank you.
comprehensive and really well organized.
And we have so we're gonna have our budget hearing. We'll talk about that, in upcoming, but we'll keep talking, and this was really
Thanks.
a great presentation. So thanks to Kathleen as well, and thank you. We have kind of a light agenda tonight. Now we're gonna move on to school choice, which you already have.
Right.
Thank you.
I think you're all familiar with it, but the school choice program, if a district opts into it, allows parents to send their children to that receiving community outside of the city or town in which they reside. We started it probably 11, 12 years ago. It's been fantastic for us in just about every way. So when a student does participate in the school choice program, they come from usually an area town. To us, that district ends up sending Grafton money in the form of tuition for that student. Once the student's accepted into school choice, we have that student all the way through graduation. I'm definitely not recommending that we move away from school choice, but if a district ever did, the students that are in the district under choice are grandfathered in all the way through graduation. It's lottery-based. We hold a lottery in this room. As I mentioned earlier, we have a very long waiting list. It's always been super, super popular. We have people calling almost every day from like Thanksgiving on. It's something. And just because somebody fills out the application, that doesn't necessarily mean anything other than they're putting their name in the hat, if you will. So it doesn't guarantee a spot unless you're chosen and or we have space. In terms of, as of today, we have 129 students in the school choice program. The program runs K through 12. Our lowest enrollment is in grade 4, and the highest is at kindergarten, 3rd grade, and 7th grade, and that's 12 students in each of those. These numbers, they could easily, if we wanted to, they could all be at 12, but because of economy of scale, the different sizes for the different classes of students, we've adjusted accordingly. It's not an exact science, but the science that does exist, I think we've got it down pretty well at this point, really well. So my recommendation would be that the school committee vote to continue Grafton's participation in the school choice program in the 2024-2025 school year. That's all that the state needs, is we are open or closed to school choice. They don't need the number of students per grade level, which grade levels, like some districts will do just 4th grade and 3rd grade or something. We're obviously K through 12, and the plan would be to open up for choice with the application process in March. By April, we have a sense of enrollment for kindergarten. Ballpark 10 is 10 spots, 10 seats, 5 in North Grafton, 5 in South Grafton is usually where my thinking is. We might adjust that based on enrollment into kindergarten. But that would be the recommendation. Obviously, our 10 12th graders will graduate and the whole thing moves forward. And that's it. I can take any questions you have.
Any questions on school choice? Liz?
I think I know this, but just for the record, I don't think, unless you've already said, did you say how much we made on school choice last year?
We made about $770,000. The average is going to be just over $6,000 per student. The cookie cutter number is $5,000, but any students who have special needs that are tied to additional staff of any kind, or it could be an ELL student tied to additional needs. Those costs are covered by the sending district, and that gets worked into that overall average.
Any other questions? Can you put that recommendation slide back up?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I move that the school committee vote to continue Grafton's participation in the school choice program for the 2024-25 school year.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, Jay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. While you're there, do you want to do your superintendent report, or do you want to go back to your seat?
Oh, shut this a little early. Oh, look at that. I wanted to just share one thing, and it is,
You're not connected yet.
all right, give me a second. Oh, look at this. Just this
Oh,
week,
yes.
we released our bigger 2024 Summer Enrichment Program. We've had a few different presentations on this. Lisa Rice, as you well know, did a phenomenal job. Just couldn't have done a better job getting this program up and running. Years ago, she stepped down this year, and Rachel Murray, we're going to have co-directors, Rachel Murray and Ryan Mercier, and they're off to a wonderful, wonderful start. So this came out, the feedback that I've received so far has been incredibly positive. Well, the 5 weeks starting July 8th, with our last day, August 8th, 4-day weeks, and obviously 5 weeks. We'll be over at the high school again. They have worked closely with Lisa. She gave a lot of her time to help them get up to speed, which was typical Lisa in a great way. So we just didn't skip a beat, so it seems. So we're offering, I didn't count how many, but an awful lot of offerings, a lot of new offerings, which is really nice. So we'll see what we get for an enrollment. I'm not sure what the magic number is to 8 kids, 9 kids, whatever it is, but our hope is that it's very popular and we can run just about everything.
That's great.
Am I missing anything? I probably.
They also, just on the parent interface side of the registration, they implemented some changes into just how everything is received and paid for, which has been really great, and the feedback has been immensely positive, not only in the offerings, but just on how smoothly the process runs for parents. You register, and then almost immediately you receive an invoice with a link to pay through Unibank. It's so smooth, it's so well done, and between Lisa's efforts and kind of getting Rachel and Ryan up to speed, and the effort that the two of them have put forth,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It really is.
And Kathleen's done a lot of work with Unibank to make that process seamless. You're going to see an expansion of that. Like, the feedback's been super positive,
Yep.
but we want that for anything that involves payment. So we're off to a great start with that.
Really impressive.
And where can people go to register and find
Right on
this
the,
information?
I found it on the front page of our website,
Correct.
top right, can't miss it.
Terrific. Thank you.
And I'll have the budget book up there tomorrow as well.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. Yeah, and I know you sent out a superintendent's report. You talked about the all-state students at our last meeting.
Yeah, right,
Um,
right. We
there
wanted
was
to
a-
share that. They did a great
Yeah,
job. Yeah, it was held right here at the high school.
great. And Kaden Ashmore, I think, did really well. Right? I
He
know.
always seems to.
He's amazing.
Like, you could just say that anytime. and
Yeah,
you're
I'll just say
okay.
that at every meeting. Kaden Ashmore, he did
Nobody's
great.
gonna doubt you.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe we'll have Caden in
You should
again
have
at
Caden
some
come
point.
back. Yeah,
I don't
'cause-
see him because he's off doing college,
yeah, but I
whatever.
think he went pretty far.
Yeah, he did, it looked
Yeah,
like
so
it.
you
Yeah.
should look
He,
it up.
he won another award at
At
his,
the event.
at the
Yeah.
event, yeah.
Yeah, he should come
I
back.
think he was in the principal's update. I feel like. Anyway,
He was,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will,
It was-
I will.
I saw it.
I'll invite him for
yeah,
sure.
invite him over.
Okay.
See if he wants to come back. Thank you so
All
much,
right, thank
Jay.
you.
Thank you.
All right, Riley and Megan, what do you guys got going on?
Yeah, sure. So the GPS Wellness Advisory Committee is looking for student reps. So, people who are interested should contact Ms. Goodwill for more information by March 8th. The Computer Science Honor Society is hosting an event for high school girls who are interested in learning how to code on March 5th, after school I'm not sure if that's a weekday or not, from 2 to 3:30. And then registration is posted in a Schoology update that was sent to the whole school. And then course selection meetings start next week for juniors, followed by sophomores and then freshmen.
For our student council, we're taking a trip to Hyannis for a 3-day conference for MASC. And this year we have 22 students attending. Last year we had 12, so it's definitely a good amount. And then following that, the next week on Friday, there's a Model UN conference at Northeastern University. Yes, we have our advisors.
We've got to get a bus for that.
We're on it. It's fine. It's gonna be fine.
Keep going.
And then tomorrow night, I believe our hockey team is playing Longmeadow at home for the first playoff game. And our 1,000-point scorers were honored at a previous basketball game just a week ago. So, yeah.
Great.
Anything else? That was good.
I think you have a Krispy Kreme fundraiser.
Yeah,
coming
you
up.
do.
Sure do.
You want me to fill in?
Yeah, go ahead.
The seniors are selling Krispy Kreme donuts starting today, going through March 12th. Reach out to a senior if you want to buy any Krispy Kreme donuts. The proceeds, the donuts are sold for $15 a box, which is $2 less than retail. They'll be delivered on March 20th, fresh. They're picked up at 5 o'clock in the morning down in Connecticut and brought and delivered right away. So buy your Krispy Kreme donuts. They help benefit the Bon Voyage party, which is a really important lock-in for the seniors after graduation, a safe celebration for them on graduation night.
And then following that, wasn't there another one? I think I heard about a parents' night out for the class of 2026, I think that was.
There is. On March 29th, there's also a parents' night out, which is the college edition. On March 29th, it benefits the class of 2026, but it is open to any parents who want to hear from a panel of, can we call ourselves experts? No, I don't know, an expert. Laura and I are sitting on the panel amongst some other parents who've been through the college process with their kids just to share stories and advice and answer questions. We're going to have people from who've had different sorts of experiences in the arts and in athletics and different things. So come out. It's in the Great Hall at One Grafton Common, and it's gonna be a great night. We're gonna have drinks and appetizers and have a fun time while learning a little bit about the process. So thank you, Riley, for reminding me.
And then lastly, along those lines of the panel, we're planning, along with the rest of the student advisory, to do a panel for seniors and juniors to talk to underclassmen, give some advice before they graduate, and then we're thinking about extending it to the middle school too, just so there's more information flow and people can get a better idea for their high school planning.
That's great.
Awesome.
We're gonna try to include some non-college options for people, just because Grafton does a really great job focusing on college stuff, but that's not what everyone always wants to do.
Yep, many paths. That's great. Really
Very
glad
cool.
about that. Awesome. Well done. I will add, there's another competing Krispy Kreme. I feel like
A
just to
competing
be-
Krispy Kreme?
Yeah, I think the middle school for
Yes, they do that for the school
the
in Africa, I
yeah,
think.
the 6th grade or they're 7th graders now. I think they're also selling Krispy Kreme donuts.
Oh.
Yeah, for their
okay.
Kenya project.
Yeah, so
Ah.
get your Krispy Kreme donuts. Grafton. You may leave if you want. I mean, if you want to stay, I don't think it'd be too much longer, but you're also welcome to go.
Okay, I would be happy to stay, but I have a test tomorrow, so.
Go home and study. Get
Studying.
some
Good
sleep.
luck.
Thank you.
What's your test on tomorrow?
It's for math, so I have to do
Yeah.
my whiteboard trick.
Ah, okay.
Absolutely.
All right,
If
sure
you
you're
need
gonna do
help, feel free. I'll give
Thank
you a call.
you, thank you.
Everyone left.
Yeah, the
Yeah, we
PR
did, didn't
people,
we?
'cause
Yeah.
we're not mathy.
Oh,
well, we knew.
right. Human resources report. you're on. Do you have anything?
I just wanted to update you for something that we're looking to implement for the beginning of next year. We are going to be partnering with a company called ArcsEd, and they are going to be helping us out with the mandated trainings for our staff, which is often, I think, thought of as just kind of a checkbox task. But there is a lot of state and federal compliance that is required of us. And this company that is run by educators and actually started from people who were in the leadership role in local school districts. What they do is they compile all of the regulations that we're required to train people on, and they've created some really engaging modules for people to participate in. So we can push out not only what we're mandated to train people on, but we can also design our own trainings that are either district specific or school specific or even department specific. And it ranges everywhere from IEPs and 504s to anaphylaxis to asbestos, anything and everything that we want to train any of our staff on. And they manage all of the tracking data for it as well. So they send automatic reminders to staff who, can complete it in 15-minute increments as time allows, or as much as, a couple hours of their time. And they send the administrators the data as to who has completed it. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to just improve the training aspect that we have to go through every year and make it a little bit more interesting and engaging for our staff.
Any questions?
Is that, I'm sorry,
Yeah, Amy, go ahead.
is it Massachusetts specific?
The majority of their clients are from Massachusetts, so I would say yes, but they will pitch to you that they can pull state-specific guidelines as well, but they pull both federal and state for us.
Cool.
Mandy, does that include things like DEI training, or is it more like bullying,
Yes.
that kind of thing as well?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yep,
great.
there's a almost endless list of options
great.
that includes anything and everything under the sun. And basically, if you don't see it on the list, you can make it and put it on the list.
That's
So,
fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Anything else?
No, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. And we'll talk about future agenda planning. We have a few things we have to discuss. First, so we will move our budget hearing, it's already moved to March 12th. We moved it from tonight since we hadn't had the budget. So that'll start at 6:45. We'll see if we can possibly get Caden, if his schedule allows. One other thing that we need to address, and you'll see it's gone, we had May 21st on as a meeting, which is Election Day. We talked about possibly moving it to the 14th. That is a concert night. So at this point, we are just having one meeting on May 7th, which will be our superintendent evaluation and the handbook meeting, which is usually a pretty intense meeting. I don't believe that we're going to be missing out on May, but if anybody has any concerns, I mean, we can certainly, the 23rd, we can put some things in, we can move things around. So that's what happened with May, and thanks for Amy for messaging me on that. Amy, what do I have?
I just wanted to say that I think a month is too long before we reorganize, because the committee would, as of Election Day, have no chair, have no leadership. I would like to see if we could meet the following Tuesday, if only to do that one thing before we go into June. That just seems like an awful long time.
So what would happen, depending on who remains, so the secretary could move and be the leader. You'd still have a quorum. I mean, you could do
Right, but
that.
everybody's term ends on Election Day. So we have
Right.
no chair, we have no secretary, we have no vice chair. We ran into this a few years ago, too.
I mean, okay, well, I'm saying you were the one who was concerned about the 14th.
No, I wasn't concerned about the 14th.
Oh, you weren't?
No, I only mentioned it was Election Day. we can't reorganize before the election anyway. So the 14th is moot.
I misunderstood. I thought you said, and the following week is a concert night, is what I have from you, which is
That would be
fine.
the 28th, which is possible.
So then I would do, yeah, so we can go back and look at times. I agree with you. I think we could also look at a different day of the week. If we're just doing that, we could do it in a conference room. I mean, it's not,
I don't have a concert marked on the 28th.
all right, well, then,
Um,
I apologize. I misread. So
that's
Jay
okay.
already looked into the 14th as a date that we could
have
do.
it tentatively booked if you choose to use it.
So we can absolutely add that. I mean, I agree with you. I'm just going back in because,
What does the 14th get us? I'm confused. What does the 14th
oh,
get
the
us?
14th is not a
Doesn't work.
Tuesday.
It's,
It
it's
is.
before the
Before
election.
the election.
I'm so sorry.
28th is the next Tuesday after the election.
Oh, my God. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I am date challenged.
No, it's okay. And
Yeah.
your computer's not working, which doesn't help.
No, no, no.
it's
That
the
is where
day
my
after
head was.
Memorial Day.
So it has to be the day after Memorial Day.
Which is not, I know it's not Jay's favorite thing to have a meeting right after a holiday, but
That's okay. That's better than the vacation.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
graduation week, it's just crazy.
what?
So I said
Crazy
I would
week.
recommend that that's all that's on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. And got it. I apologize, Amy. I
No,
really.
it's all right.
Yeah. I see what I said to you. Yeah. I said, oh, we probably thought, I got it. I got it. Got it. Election day is
Okay.
just late this year. It's such a late day.
It's weird.
It is a little
Like the
bit.
21st is so late.
Okay, so, sorry,
Okay.
so which date is that then that we're,
The
28th.
28th.
that's the 28th?
And we're meeting just to reorg.
And then I suppose whatever, if something's going on, people can do whatever. Okay, thank you, Amy.
Yep.
Anything else? So we'll move that reorganization off of June 11th, and then the food services report, the student advisory meeting, and the bullying prevention plan. Okay, anything else?
Nope.
We don't have minutes tonight. We have old minutes in here, but we've already approved them. There was some confusion.
Oh, I thought that, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We don't have the latest minutes. And I believe we have a warrant.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move the committee approve warrant number 32 dated February 8th, 2024, in the amount of $313,067.77.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move the committee approve warrant number 33 dated February 15th, 2024, in the amount of $445,808.49.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries. Thank you. We don't have any policy member reports. Laura.
I'm a bit late in sharing this, so I attended the CPAC's Coffee and Conversations event that was so well attended they cannot have it in the library anymore because they ran out of space for all the people who came and participated, which is great. So they have another one Thursday this week, 10 a.m. It was very lively and interactive discussion. It brought together parents of kids of different ages, which was great, from high school to pre-K. It's a wonderful thing that this CPAC leadership has started outside of their regular meetings in a more sort of informal setting. And I was just really pleased to see it and see the great participation, and am happy they're continuing it. So I encourage everybody, to participate if it's relevant. This is great.
Great, thank you. Any other? Liz?
I guess since we were talking about some of the fundraisers coming up, I have couple more to add for the schools. So we're talking about the Bon Voyage event and the Krispy Kreme donut sale. We also have a Bon Voyage committee meeting on February 29th on Thursday. It's at the high school in the student activities room. So if any parents of seniors or juniors, for that matter, would like to come and join us, it's at 7 o'clock there. And then March 6th, also another event for the class of 24. We're having a parents' night out at the Townhouse Tavern. That's March 6th as well, and it is from 7. The time has changed. It's from 7 to 9:30, and tickets are available online.
Thanks, Liz.
Yeah.
I went, as I mentioned, I went to 2 MASC events. We had kind of a meet and greet at Apex for Division 4, which was really, wasn't as well attended as we liked, but we did get some people that we had never met before from across Division 4, so that was really nice. It's always great to just learn from others and discuss and connect and network. And then that Saturday, we had our division leadership meeting, as I previously mentioned. So we brainstormed on just doing some more events for our division, and one of them actually, I recommended, I haven't talked to them yet, possibly having our CPEC kind of host, because I was talking to some other districts, and their CPECs were not nearly as well organized as ours. So I was proud to kind of hold ours up, and just how can better work with school committees. That's one idea. So stay tuned for more information on that. And then one thing we did kind of hear from that as well is, and Jay kind of touched on it, was Jason Frazier. So he's really involved. He's vice president of MASC right now. He does a lot of legislation. He's chair of the legislation committee. Kind of came back and he said, we often will hear from our state rep and our senator, you know, or they fought for more per pupil or spending that from the $30 goes to we try to get it to 100. They settle at 60 or 50. That probably is off the table, even the $50 to $60 to not, and that's not a big deal for us. But I think we're in for some really tough budget times, not just in Grafton, but across the state. So that was a big concern for everybody. And I think it's important just to note that it's not a Grafton problem, it's a state problem. So it was a great day of learning, though. All right, anything else? All right, any correspondence? No, I would know, probably no. We don't need to go into executive session, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.